Can you see me?
I
I
can.
can see you.
You can. Excellent. Yeah,
This
no.
is so exciting. We've graduated. We've graduated now that we've done 100 episodes.
Yep.
We are professional, we're mature, we're good at this, kind of. And so
Honestly,
we thought, hey, what could we do to elevate this? And it was turn on the camera.
now you can see us. Now you can see
Now you can see the eye rolling and the faces that I make when you speak.
Anyway, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. I loved our party. Association Transformation turned 100, and it was great to have everyone come out. Thanks to ACGI for sponsoring. And it really, I don't know, it inspired me to take on some new, even kind of bigger and more dangerous topics.
Let's do it then. Let's do it. I mean,
Is danger, does that like intrigue you?
I'm kind of worried about how excited you are, and I'm beginning to think, oh no, she's going to dress up in her Star Wars costumes again.
You know what? Next year for May the 4th, I will, now we can, use our full look to support the theme, to support the topic. I expect the same from you.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Well, I know that the whole button-up shirt and a collar is a big deal.
Yeah, I
So
was gonna say,
congratulations. Thank you.
thank you.
Um,
Look, I almost did my top button up, and I look wearing a watch, so I'm like,
wow, this is your grown-up costume. This is
yeah,
nice.
yeah, this is me
It's nice.
adopted. Yeah.
This is nice. All right, but seriously,
Yeah.
Brewer Pratt Solutions, elevated. I mean, we're here as the parents of association transformation to bring the topics to the people that most others won't have. And I want to spend this summer having some of these, again, more dangerous conversations because as consultants, we get to work with a lot of people. And as I admit all the time, no one calls consultants when things are going great. So we see a lot of what people are going through, what organizations are struggling with, and we have to tell those stories while at the same time protecting the innocent. So I'd like to chat today about the new CEO experience. And over the last 10 plus years, not only in our own experience, you and yours as a CEO, but mine with clients and first-time CEOs, repeat CEOs in a new role, and what I see happening and how it could be better. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's an incredibly important conversation to have. And you're right, without betraying confidences, without sort of pointing fingers, I think it's really important that, when you're walking into a CEO position, either as a new CEO, brand new first timer, or as a seasoned executive who's moving on to the next position, I think it's really important to sort of have more than just an awareness. I think having an appreciation of sort of what's expected of you in the role, the culture, the organization you're moving to. Yeah, I think it's incredibly important. And I do talk.
Well, and
Well,
you use some important words there, not only culture, but preparedness. I think there's really three parts of this. One is the kind of the
yeah,
applying for the job, the going through the interview process, the consideration phase.
yeah,
And then there's that onboarding, new exec, new CEO coming in. And then there's kind of that post honeymoon phase after your new label has worn off.
mm,
And having done some executive searches now, having talked to a lot of new CEOs, both on our podcast, both as clients, as friends, I
yeah.
think what I've come to realize, and I don't know how you experience this in the job search portion of your CEO life, but people often don't ask the right questions. I think first having to admit that the grass is not always greener. You're basically going to be trading one set of problems for another.
Yeah.
If you are in fact going from one CEO position to another chief staff executive position. But are you really asking the right questions? It's not just about what you see on the 990. And, you mentioned the word culture. There's so much more to understand and to really interrogate the organization about, so you know what you're getting into.
Yeah, yeah. I think I would step back. Even I would take. I would take a step back further if I'm thinking about this as a first time chief exec, somebody who's stepping up into the role. I actually think there's a big question about what the job actually is. And I
What do
don't
you mean? What do you mean?
well, I don't think people, and I do talk from my experience. I was convinced as a senior staffer that I was going to be an epic chief executive. I was utterly convinced that 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 I could do a better job. I was watching my chief exec. Um, I was convinced that I could do at least as good, if not better.
Yeah.
Reality is, I didn't. I didn't do enough research. I didn't really get into really understanding what the job is. And of course, it depends if you're going into a big association, you're going into a small association, if you've got lots of staff, lots of volunteers, it all depends, obviously, on the kind of, the size and scope of the organization in which you're entering. But for me, I don't think I really appreciated the isolation of the role.
Yeah.
But also the kind of the pressures that you have to carry as the chief executive, as the
Yeah.
executive director. Everybody, without exception, is looking to you for answers.
Yes. And those are the nice, well-intentioned. I think there's
Yeah,
also those who are, I wouldn't say vested in your failure, but aren't rooting for your success.
absolutely. There's some who are looking at you to blame because you are de facto head of operations. You're running the organization on a day-to-day basis, and yeah, whilst maybe they're not certainly not advocating against you, but they're certainly not necessarily cheating for you.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think you know having that appreciation that you are in a distinct and an absolutely unique position within
Yeah.
the organization. You're the
Yeah.
conduit between the governance structure, the governance function, and the operational function. You're the conduit between the board and staff. You fit in neither camp. You don't fit comfortably in the staff
Yeah.
environment. You don't sit comfortably in the governance environment
It's
because
lonely. It's lonely. And, again, if we're talking about that preliminary phase where you're still considering, um, you can better understand how lonely it's going to be by asking those questions in that preliminary interview phase. Are there other internal candidates or are there internal candidates? That's going to change how this goes,
yeah.
right? Not only in terms of whether you're going to have positions to fill because the people who didn't get it leave, or there may be people interested in undermining you. I've always encouraged people to ask to speak to the outgoing executive, to a board member, to the number two, or to a senior staff member. You should be interviewing them, and you need to follow your gut because they're on their best behavior. Just like to a certain extent, as a candidate, you're on your best behavior.
Mhm.
You ask for financials, you ask for overviews. They're going to give you all the good stuff.
Yeah, they're going to give you what they want you to see.
Right. And, then with that onboarding piece, I mean, I can't tell you how many executives I've known over my career who've gotten into their role, start to peel back the
Mhm.
layers of the onion, and there are so many messes, so many fires, so many things that they weren't told about, even if they had asked, because sometimes the board doesn't even know.
When I started, they couldn't tell me which bank our bank account was with. Never mind how much money was in there. They
Yeah.
couldn't tell me that. They couldn't tell me which bank we were banking with. They couldn't tell me who was the signature, the signatories on the accounts. And it's like,
Yeah.
whoa, my God, yeah. So, and yet I had no inkling of that when I was being interviewed for my, C for CEO position. It was all, this is amazing. This represents the brave new dawn. My God, isn't this fantastic? We're all in it together. And I think this is where you're right. I think this is when you start to look at culture because, an association, any organization, any business is a system. And that system is held together, yes, by processes, yes, by protocol, systems of checks and balances, but it's also held together through culture. And, and how do we define that? And how is that organization defining that? And what I found in my experience was the culture of non-communication, a really environment, not because there was any malice or any problem, any personal issues per se. They just was not a communicative
Yes.
association. Well, that was incredible. You can imagine that was incredibly difficult then to kind of walk in and sort of work that out. And again, would it have stopped me going for the job? Probably not, but
No, of course not.
it would have certainly have prepared me a lot better for some of the shocks that sort of materialize. And look, I'm talking about my own experience, but I know many, as you do, many, first-time CEOs who have walked into the job and been quite, well, bowled over, quite frankly,
Oh yeah.
argued by deficiencies in an organization's structures, processes, systems. And that's cool. It's totally fine for those to exist. That's one of the reasons you're being brought in. It's one of the
Right, right.
reasons they want a good person in that chief executive position to pull it all together. Sometimes just knowing it is enough just to kind of prepare you better for it and to plan for it.
Well, what's you say that they bring you in because they want something different. And what I've often found, especially I guess in the last, 5 to 7 years, is boards or search committees
Yeah,
often think that they are supposed to seek out a change agent. They're supposed to want something dramatically different, as if
yeah,
there's some pendulum of executive management that if you've had someone who's this way, you should then go for someone who's the opposite.
that's true.
And so they think they want this, and they go out and seek that. And then when that person is onboarded and starts, they quickly find that the leadership and the staff don't have the stomach, don't have the interest in truly living the change and the adaptations that you want to bring to bear. So they've asked you to, they hired you to bring change, and then when you do so, there's the pushback, more pushback than you could have ever imagined.
Always. People love talking about change. People are really good at talking a good game about change. Most people hate it.
Right. Well, and they use the word change when I think really they just want improvement.
Yeah, when they talk about energy or different perspective
They
or
just want better. They don't
yeah,
necessarily want totally different. They just want improvement. And so, as a candidate and as a new executive, irrespective of whether you're first or five-time CEO, you have to listen really carefully. And in between those lines, what people aren't saying, body language, the difference between what the staff say, what the board say, what the search committee says, those incongruencies, I think you really need to pay attention to those things, because very quickly, whether it's 6 months, a year, 18 months, your honeymoon period will end.
oh
You will no longer be able to say, well, I'm dealing with what I inherited. You
yeah.
can't say that forever. And I don't even know what the lifespan of that type of statement is.
I don't, and I think now 2024 it's really short.
I think so too. I mean, COVID bought people some time. CEOs that took over anytime in 2021, 22, maybe even 23, you had an elongated honeymoon period.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Now,
think the patience for that and the need for improvement, maybe not change, but improvement is shorter. People's expectations are higher because you're not that person. And the pandemic's over. You don't have an excuse anymore, right? You're
yeah,
back in person. Everything's, quote unquote normal. You should be running on full steam, all engines. And I'm very nervous for execs who came in during COVID, who now that honeymoon period is very much over, and they're still dealing with massive disruptions. They maybe have not returned to full staff. They maybe have not repaired their reserve account or their savings. And it's just not the world they expected.
yeah, yeah. So beyond asking the right questions and talking to the right people, when you get into the role, And we've spoken a lot about, preparing to, apply, get interviewed, get in the role. Yeah, it's all fantastic. Good the job. I'm so excited. I'm going to get drunk. And, and then you walk into the environment. um,
More insights into Andrew's life. Yeah.
every job interview I've ever had. Jobs, but always like to get drunk after the interview. I think I think how do we what am I trying to ask you? What
Are you drunk now? Is
I
this
may
what's
be.
happening?
I may be. It's a midsummer afternoon. I've been drinking since breakfast. No, it's what I'm
You get into the role. You get into the role. How long? A lot of candidates that I've worked with, a lot of CEOs that are highly successful, they always talk about this listening tour that
okay.
they want to go on in the very beginning.
This is what I was getting to.
Oh, okay. See, we've done this long enough. I can help with your
Yeah,
drunken brain blanks.
exactly.
And
Yes, yeah. Basically, it's day one, week one, month one. So what? Because the
but
thing,
how long do you listen for? At what point do you have to start taking the totality of information you have, both observed on paper, culture, and what needs to come next? At what point do you have to start making decisions and then own those decisions?
well, honestly, in my opinion, not long.
Right.
I
Well, and
think,
that's when you figure out how much stomach the
yeah,
leadership has.
because
Uh,
I think if you're worth your salt in the position, you should be sitting there with quite a strategic head on your shoulders anyway. You should be able to determine the landscape quite rapidly. And I'm not, and to that end, I'm quite comfortable and I'd be quite happy with a short honeymoon, because actually, I think you want to be getting, just as we expect our directors, when they join the board on day one, we say to them, well, you're on day one, you're a director. Day 365, you're a director. There's no difference. I would expect boards to want their chief executive and expect their chief executive to be running at three-quarter speed very, very soon after starting. And so
yeah.
I don't think it should take you that long to ascertain where the successes in the in the relationship in the association are, where the strengths are in the organization, and where those weaknesses are. It shouldn't take you very long at all. I think where
And it is
people.
a relationship. I mean, that is the right word. It's a relationship with the staff
Mhm.
who don't know you, aren't used to you, are probably paranoid and scared and concerned as to what changes you're going to bring that then impact them, their job, their authority, their status quo. Relationship with the board who don't know you, but it's their term and they had all these plans and an expectation as to how this was going to go. It is a relationship, and you have to walk such a fine line between confidence and direction and decisiveness, and also empathetic and listening and a coach and a mentor. It's a thankless position, and I've known many what I call rebound executives. The biggest trap that I've seen in this is where you come in and you replace a high performing, well loved, very liked executive who was there for 10, 20, 30 years. So very large shoes to fill. And you come in and they say they want change. The board, the search committee says they want something different. You get in there, you find a lot of problems that this very popular CEO didn't tell anyone about. And then you also find that people are more entrenched in the status quo than you ever could have imagined. And you make it maybe 18 months, you make it 24 months, because either you don't want to deal with this, or because all the bodies buried and all the layers of mess that you discover are not what you were sold.
Yeah,
And no one wants to hear that the previous administration may have mishandled things.
and I think in that scenario, if you don't want to handle it, you shouldn't be a chief executive. It's as
Okay,
sim- it's
okay.
as simple as that.
You're right. No one told you it was going to be easy. No one made you any promises. I get it. I get it. You're right.
And again, that's the job. That's the gig. We talk about being, a figurehead, an advocate, a champion, the conduit. But the gig is sorting out the mess, right?
Ugh.
And being the person who's leading, and not just leading the staff, who's leading the board through that process as well. And for me, where things break down is where that strength of character, that strength of leadership character falters in the chief executive. I've seen it happen because the board is rooted in, a history and a culture and a tradition in the organization. And that's really difficult. But if you have that strength of leadership, that strength of character, and you approach it in a communicative, collaborative way, I think there's the opportunities are endless for you. But if you simply think, oh, it's too much like hard work, I'm not going to take on this battle, I'm not going to die on this hill, you'll never achieve anything. That's the
Yeah.
bottom line. If
Yeah.
you just want a quiet life, don't be a chief executive. As simple as that. Just
I
don't.
didn't think that this pod was going to talk people out of the ascension through the association management ladder.
I think that's really important to know, actually, because not everybody is cut out to be a chief executive. I wasn't cut out to be a chief executive. I hated it. I couldn't
Yeah.
stand it. And you've
Yeah.
heard me say that many times. And as a result, I wasn't that good at it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I've always acknowledged the dangers and the stress and the wounds that come from that role. I've always loved being a number two, whether it was a chief of staff, for an elected official, whether it was, deputy executive at I've always enjoyed being number two, making that person's life easier and kind of doing the behind the scenes work.
I think some.
Because
Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
don't want to take those bullets. I don't want to wear that armor. I don't want to take, to go into those battles.
Oh, and it is a battle. It can be. It can be.
Yeah.
Yes, battles, and you do come out wounded, and I don't, no chief executive wants sympathy. um not if they're worth the salt, they don't, but they do. I think they do want empathy. I think they want an appreciation that there's is a distinct leadership function that goes in all directions,
Yeah.
and everything comes back at them from all directions. But I think, again, hindsight is always 2020, isn't it? And I think if today I was going for a CEO position, I would, oh God, there's so many questions around the relationship with the board's understanding of what constitutes their role versus that of the executive versus that of the chief executive. I would have so many better questions, and I would be so better armed with a more sophisticated understanding of my role, their role, how the whole system fits together.
Yeah.
But and again, I think, because it's quite a few years on since I went for, since I got that first CEO role, and I think, the landscape, the association
Oh,
sector
so different.
is dramatically different.
So
Dramatically
different. So
different.
different. I mean, CEOs now, we talk about the skill sets that are necessary to be a successful association executive, and they're so different than they were before, so much more expansive.
Oh,
Not
absolutely.
only because usually small staff, you're having to be an expert in that many more things, but the expectations the board has of you,
Yep.
and the agility with which your organization needs to function now versus versus kind of the pre-pandemic or even 10 years ago expectations.
But thankfully, the support mechanisms, and the training and the guidance and the opportunities to be mentored and the
Yes.
opportunity to just have a far more robust and diverse international network of peers
Right.
is
The
staggering.
community is more robust. The community of knowledge is more robust.
Huge.
And I think that's an important takeaway here so that we're not scaring people away from the CEO role is if you are already in that role, ask for help.
Yeah.
Go find a network, go join a listserv, go sign up for a session, go find a leadership coach. You don't have to be alone. And if you're not yet in a CEO role or you're in the one you've been in for a while, evaluate it as maybe just as difficult as the next opportunity. Again, the grass is not always greener. You may seek change yourself, but it may not be, it's the devil, And I hope that those staff those directors and managers and those non-executive staff that listen. I hope you hear this in a sense that your chief executive, your CEO doesn't have it as easy as you may think. They're in a battle that you may not fully understand. And as much as you want their appreciation and their support, it may be nice to just say, hey, thanks to them, or hey, I know it's a rough week, or you've got a board meeting next week. That appreciation and that recognition can go both ways. It doesn't just have to go from the top seat down.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. One of the greatest, I was blessed with a really good, supportive, collaborative team, and all of whom I recruited as well. But and actually it did make a huge amount of difference to be able to go to the pub after work and just download and say, God, and for them to say board meeting next week and know what that kind of meant,
Yeah.
to understand. And he was like, yeah, that made it just so much easier, even though, as I said, early on in this conversation, you don't fit comfortably anyway. But actually to know that, and I also had a similar, relationship with members of my board as well at times, who were able to say, oh, board meeting next week, and they got it. And that was all to do with cultivating those, personable
And
relationships.
this is a whole nother topic, right? Because I've always come from the school that, you want to be friendly with your board members, but they're not your friends.
Absolutely. Oh,
And again, another separate topic. We'll save that for later in the year. And I hope we do get to come back to this CEO in the modern era discussion, because it's so layered. It's different given different types of organizations, whether medical societies, whether trade associations, whatever it is. I think for me, not having been a CEO of an association before, what I take from this and seeing kind of all the other sides of it, if you're looking for something, make sure you fully appreciate the situation you're currently in before you jump. If you're interviewing, if you're looking, ask the hard, uncomfortable questions. The more you push before you get there, the more information you will have, and the more you'll be able to see their reaction. The other piece of this when you first take over is observe, is listen to what's not being said, and decide when to switch flip that switch between listening and observing to starting to make your own decisions. And invest in all of these relationships, both staff and board, proactively. Don't wait for them to come to you. Go to them, knock on the door, set up lunches, set up breakfast, set up phone calls. And, we haven't even opened the can of worms of a virtual office or a remote association. I can't, that's got to have its own bag of challenges. And maybe we should invite some CEOs from remote associations and talk to them about best practices, because that's a different beast.
But my last point on this is, do everything that you've outlined there, and you will have a really positive impact on an association. And you will feel that you have had that positive impact. So I think, get it right, and it's hugely, hugely rewarding. And I think it's really important that I finish on that positive note,
No, and you're right. But the thing that I took away most from your experience is this isn't going to be easy. It's not supposed to be easy. And that doesn't mean that you're not being successful. It just means that it's a hard job. It's the top job for a reason.
Yeah.
And not everyone's cut out for it for a reason. So, don't be so hard on yourself. Recognize the environment is one of challenge, and that it can be lonely, but you don't have to go it alone. Association transformations on your side. We're here. Let us know how things are going. Let us know what other topics you'd like to tackle. We can tackle them on your behalf. And thanks for touching on this. I know it has a lot of personal meaning for you, Andrew. And I know we've had a lot of clients over the years that struggle, that vent, that don't make it, that find themselves in CEO positions that aren't as fulfilling as they had hoped. And then there are those that do, that are that next generation of leader
Yeah.
that the organization is so thankful for, and they become transformative and they build the teams. So it can be so powerful. I just want everyone to be kind of informed and aware and be able to make the choices that are best for them and
Yeah,
set themselves up
absolutely.
to succeed.
And I think for me, I'm just now happy being your number two.
Oh, stop it.
Being
See, now that the camera's on, you're playing to the audience. And
being the
we,
power behind the throne.
if, oh my,
Behind every great woman.
oh my gosh, if only you really meant that. But the point is, this was our first on video,
Yeah,
face to face
I love it.
for all the world to see podcast. I love it. We're doing this. And I want to thank everyone who has supported Association Transformation through its gestation, its evolution, and stick with us. We're excited to have more topics just like this. You can find Association Transformation wherever you get your podcasts. You can also visit us at associationtransformation.org. And until next time, put your members and your mission first.